high. Some of the Gryffindor players seem to decide to direct their anger over the situation at Slytherin for lording it over them. Their impotence rankles, she knows. Ginny puts her energy into keeping her players focused on the game, and leaves Dimazar to handle her own people. In the absence of bludgers, there are a lot more shoves and fouls as the score climbs quickly on both sides, the keepers pushed to their limits. It's brutal, but nowhere near as brutal as a bludger to the side of the head. It's clear that this match will come down to the snitch in the end. Fortunately for them, Gryffindor's Seeker still seems far too aware of just whose position he is filling. Rico is more than sharp enough to take advantage of it. She manipulates him with ease, confusing him with feints and sharp turns. It's an intensely fast-moving match, all things told. Ginny makes a quick dive to catch a mediocre pass from Urquhart, getting an elbow in her ribs from her Gryffindor counterpart. Pulling hard to one side, she rams him with her hip, nearly knocking him off before rolling over the top of him and streaking down towards the goals. She hears him curse behind her, the crowd roaring, but focuses on the rings. Right as she stretches up to take a shot, she gets hit from behind, hard enough that she's forced down low over her broom handle, nearly smashing her nose. Her fingers fumble the quaffle and it plummets towards the grass. "Whoops, sorry," shouts the Gryffindor Seeker as he rights himself on his own broom. "I could have sworn I'd seen the snitch." There's a gasp and a cheer from the other end of the pitch, and Ginny looks back. "You may want Pomfrey to check your eyes for you," she says with a grin. The Seeker frowns, glancing back as well to see Rico pulling up with the snitch in her hand. He lets out a rather creative string of curses, and Ginny just laughs. It's done. She hears one of the Gryffindors say something particularly nasty, but other than the odd obscene gesture in return, her players hold it together. They did it. The match is over. For the first time, she allows herself to glance over at the Carrows to see their reaction. She locates them in the crowd just in time to see them gesturing to someone on the field. From behind her, Rosia shouts, but before Ginny can turn to look she hears the far too familiar crack of a bat. "Dimazar!" Ginny yells, but it's too late. The girl barely has time to turn before the bludger is hitting her square in the chest. She tumbles back off her broom, hitting the ground with a nasty thump. Ginny spins around, finding Urquhart holding Rosia's bat, a triumphant grin twisting his face. He has the gall to grin at her, flipping the bat up in the air as if to catch it. But before he can, a hex catches him in the chest, Urquhart falling to the ground. Things quickly get out of control after that, spells and fists flying as the two teams take each other on. Hooch and McGonagall and Hagrid wade out to stop the fight, but the Carrows just remain in their seats laughing. Ginny throws up protective spells to keep the players apart as best she can, grabbing Rico when she would throw herself into the fight. She gives her a look of outrage, but Ginny just digs her fingers in. "I will hex you myself if I have to." Rico lets out a really long string of abusive curses, but doesn't seem willing to call her bluff. Underscore 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 underscore. Nearly everyone on the Gryffindor and Slytherin teams end up with detention. Rico and Ginny manage to avoid it, even if she's not sure Rico will ever completely forgive her for that. Not having detention is great, not getting to have her teammates' backs with defending themselves against those bloody stupid Gryffindor pricks as she put it, is something else entirely. Ginny has no regrets. Well, almost no regrets. Because there was one other person not to get detention, and that was Urquhart. That night, Ginny waits until everyone in her room is soundly asleep, before slipping out of the dorms. Fortunately the hospital wing isn't far, and with a particularly helpful shortcut, she manages to avoid Filch and his bloody cat. The infirmary is dark and quiet. Only one bed is currently occupied, and Ginny crosses over to it. "Here to finish the job?" a quiet voice asks. Ginny looks down at Dimazar. "How are you feeling?" She grimaces, pushing up to sit against the headboard. "Like I got hit in the chest by a bludger." Ginny purses her lips. "Yeah." She sits down in the chair next to the bed, the two of them warily regarding each other. "I know it probably doesn't mean much," Ginny eventually says, "but I kicked Urquhart off the squad." "Did you?" Dimazar says. Ginny shrugs. He made a liar of me. Dimazar laughs before wincing and pressing a hand to her chest. And you would never stoop to lie. Ginny smiles, acknowledging the hit. Lying is not something that disturbs her in the least. He ruined my plan, she amends. My perfectly solid plan. Making her look incompetent is something she finds very hard to forgive. But if she's honest with herself, it was really her own damn fault. She never should have put Urquhart on the squad. She knew he was trouble. But she spent so much time worrying about making waves, about doing anything that might look remotely suspicious, that she ignored her instincts. I'm sorry, Ginny says. Dimazar shakes her head. As much as I'd love to pummel you, you can't be held accountable for the actions of one slimy git. And you tried. Ginny doesn't point out that she much prefers success to attempts. Attempting just means you failed to do it right. Dimazar sighs. What? She shrugs. I just don't like feeling like the Carrows won. Did they? Ginny asks, looking at the other girl. We're still here, aren't we? Dimazar's eyes narrow. Maybe I'm just waiting to hex you when your back is turned. Maybe you are, Ginny says. But I don't think so. She snorts, sliding back down to lie in bed. Besides, Ginny says, getting to her feet. We'll find a way to get back at them. Dimazar grins. Now that sounds like a plan. Underscore 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 underscore. When Ginny arrives at her next detention, Snape gives her a long, hard assessing look. The Carrows believe you instigated that little stunt at the Quidditch match, but I told them you would never be so foolish. Ginny shrugs. I guess I'm not a very good captain after all. Can't even control my own players. Perhaps, Snape says, like he doesn't really believe that for a moment. He fingers his wand. But perhaps I should see what I can find out from you. Ginny merely clasps her hands casually in front of her. You could try. He sneers at her. Don't get cocky. It's one thing to hide innocuous information in a comfortable setting. It's another to protect vital information that could cost you your life or someone else's, memories fraught with emotion and intimacy and weakness. She really doesn't like the sound of this. You've barely begun. The next 2 hours he sets out to prove it. There is no more apple or parlor tricks, but only full assaults on her every thought and memory. It's painful, and it feels for the first time that this is true punishment, as if he is reminding her of the cost of recklessness. She doesn't get mad, she doesn't let herself be afraid. She builds and protects and lies and lets it become second nature. When she fails, she tucks it away to be analyzed at length later. And then she gets back up off her knees and tries again. Underscore 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 underscore. The castle wakes on Monday morning to the news that Quidditch has been cancelled for the rest of the year. The official line is because it is a hotbed of violence, but Ginny suspects it has more to do with the fact that the Carrows aren't at all sure of their ability to control it. Ginny calls one final team meeting that evening. She waits in the changing room as her team files in. She stands up in front of them. As you've no doubt all heard, Quidditch has been cancelled for the rest of the year. They all nod and groan, shooting each other commiserating looks. At least that means we won the Quidditch Cup, right? Vasey says, clearly trying to find the bright side. Technically, I suppose so, Ginny says. Sweet Martin says, crossing his arms over his chest. Makes me 2 for 2. Rico snorts. Yes, clearly you are the only reason we've won. The rest of us could have taken a few matches off base, and Thwaite says. Martin nods. Pretty much. Wankavasi grumbles. Martin gasps, putting his hands over Rico's ears. Not in front of Rico. Rico slaps his hands away. Oh, sod off, you stupid cunt. Everyone nearly falls down with laughter. Rosia, who up until now has been quiet, says, speaking of cunts, where's Urquhart? He's taken it as a personal affront, that Urquhart stole his bat. If I had wanted to start a fight, I bloody well would have started it myself, he snarled to Ginny after the match. She's beginning to realize that the trust she put in him meant more to him than she thought. It was the last thing I did as your captain, Ginny says. I kicked his sorry ass off the squad. Little more than symbolic really, but it felt good all the same. Well rid of him, Rico says, the rest of them grumbling in agreement. Well, as amusing as it is to abuse Urquhart, Ginny says, that's not really why I asked you all here. Basenthwaite eyes her. So why did you? I thought you deserved to know why I did it. Why I helped Gryffindor like that. It's obvious, isn't it? Rico says. Is it? Ginny asks. Martin nods. The Carrows are utter twats, trying to mess with Quidditch. Everyone nods in agreement, even Rosier. Quidditch is far too serious to be used as a gambit. The thing is, I made a call, and you've all had to pay for it. I'm sorry for that. But I'm not sorry for what I did. Her jaw clenches. This is our school, not theirs. And they would do well to remember it. Basenthwaite looks around at the rest of his teammates. We understand, he says. Ginny nods, feeling a little overwhelmed by the trust they have put in her. Thank you. They hang around another half hour, chatting and abusing each other, and it's hard to believe it's really over. She's going to miss them, miss this team. After, Ginny is walking back up to the castle when Basenthwaite, Rico, and Martin catch up with her. Now what? Rico asks, falling into step next to her. What? She asks. Now nothing. Quidditch is done. Martin shakes his head. Not Quidditch. Ginny stares back at them. We want in, Rico says. You said it. This is our school. Want in. On what? Martin pulls a worn flyer out of his robe. Dumbledore's army, still recruiting. Ginny leans back away from it like it's poisonous. What makes you think I know anything about that? Does anything in the castle happen without you knowing about it? Rico asks, betraying a level of trust in Ginny's omniscience that is rather unsettling. Maybe I don't approve, Ginny says, lifting her chin. Basenthwaite's lips twitch. Maybe you don't. But I do. And the thing is, Graham is one of us. He should be here. There is anger in his eyes, a burning powerlessness that Ginny is far too familiar with. She's trusted them this far. If she can't trust them with this, there really is no hope for Hogwarts. Ginny nods. I'll see what I can find out. In the common room that evening, she gives each of them a small slip of paper. Dumbledore's army meets in the room of requirement on the 7th floor across the tapestry of Barnabas the Balmy, it says in Hannah's writing. Done. Ginny asks, pulling it away and flicking it into the fire, watching it incinerate. How do we know when? Rico asks. Ginny smiles. Ever noticed that poster on the board for History of Magic extra tutor sessions with bins? Rico pulls a face. Who in their right minds would want? Ginny touches her arm. Look at it again sometime. Underscore 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 underscore. Dear Ron. They've cancelled Quidditch. I can't bloody believe it. They're paranoid, thinking there's some student conspiracy. I don't have time for pranks. I'm too busy serving endless annoying detentions and trying not to drown under homework. As if I could give a crap about Gryffindor. Sorry, bro, but you lot are all impulsive prats and you know I'm right. I just don't like people messing with Quidditch. Oh, well. I suppose it doesn't matter anymore anyway. Quidditch is done and at least I don't have to try to pretend to play nice with the other houses anymore. Ginny. P.S. At least we kicked Gryffindor's asses. Underscore 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 underscore. It starts with Astoria, strangely enough. Next to her, Caroline hiccups once and then twice, her face comically surprised. Astoria takes one look at her and lets out a really unladylike snort. It sets everyone else off at once, Hestia and Flora leaning into each other. Nicola is the only one not laughing, watching them all intently without so much as a smile on her face. For some reason, Ginny finds this unbearably funny. She taps Tilly's arm repeatedly, poking her in the arm. When she finally gets the other girl's attention, she points towards Nicola. Her face is all Ginny manages to get out. Tilly nods enthusiastically in agreement. With the eyes. Ginny wails with laughter, nearly falling off the couch. A few of the now empty glasses fall to the floor with a crash when Caroline kicks her foot out, tears streaming down her face. But somehow this is only funnier, even as Nicola quickly vanishes the broken glass before someone cuts themselves. "Oh, Nicola," Flora says between giggles. "What would we do without you?" Hestia nods, giving her a sloppy kiss on the cheek. The laughter slowly dies off, all of the girls falling back onto the couches, Astoria and Caroline tangled up together in an overstuffed chair that is far too small for the both of them. Ginny leans her head on Tilly's shoulder, feeling a big yawn stretch her jaw. Once there is complete silence, the last giggle and hiccup fading, Nicola says, 8.5 minutes. Tilly nods. Not bad. It takes maybe another 5 minutes for the ache in Ginny's belly to finally fade. "How do you feel?" Nicola asks. Ginny lets out a breath, leaning back against the couch. "Honestly. Better than I would have thought. Relaxed." Hestia nods in agreement. "It's almost like when you need a really good cry and then afterwards you feel kind of purged." Caroline dabs at her running eye makeup with a grimace. "Could have done without the tears." Astoria gives her an indulgent smile, reaching out to fix it. "Well, you all looked like mad fools," Millicent observes from her corner of the room. "Yes, well," Tilly says, "that was rather the point. She always tests the products out with them, claiming it wouldn't do to ask someone to do something you aren't willing to do yourself." Laughter and silliness in a bottle. "I bet my brothers would be interesting in selling this," Ginny says, eyeing the slightly bubbling golden liquid. "You think so?" Tilly asks. She shrugs. "You may need to get the dosage right first." Tilly laughs, the sound a little weak. "There is that." She spends a while jotting down a few notes, Hestia nodding off on the other side of the table while Astoria and Caroline continue to whisper about something. "It's strange, isn't it?" Tilly says. "What?" Ginny asks. "Thinking about the future. After all, this." She knows she means the parlor and Hogwarts, but also the war. It feels some days like there may be no future, everything stretching so uncertain ahead of them. But as long as there is even a chance, they will prepare for all the possibilities. It's what they do. Ginny rolls her head to the side, looking at Tilly. "What else is there to think about?" Tilly gives her a tight smile and goes back to dreaming up her future. Underscore 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 underscore. There is tense silence as Ginny walks into the room of requirement with her teammates. Most of the Gryffindor players are member of the and they all stand, all of their attention riveted to the new arrivals. Ginny is vividly reminded of the first time she brought Tobias and Smithar, but shoves the painful thought away. It's Bassenthwaite who breaks the stalemate. "You," he booms, pointing to Gryffindor's keeper. Everyone is tense as Bassenthwaite marches straight up to the guy. They glare at each other, the keeper not backing down despite the height and weight Bassenthwaite has on him. "What of it?" After a long moment, Bassenthwaite lifts a hand to his chin, rubbing slightly. "You have a pretty wicked left hook." The keeper's eyebrows lift. "You've got a pretty hard head." Bassenthwaite grins. "Hope it didn't break your delicate hand." "I think it would take a hell of a lot more than that." "Come on, then," Bassenthwaite says, slapping him on the back. "Let's see if you can hex half so well as hit." Rico almost immediately searches out the Gryffindor seeker, cornering the poor bloke into an intense conversation. Everyone seems to relax, Martin moving over to watch a couple students working on their Patronus charms. Neville and Hannah appear next to Ginny. Now it's starting to look right, Neville says. If the Carrows hoped to divide us, that certainly backfired, Hannah says. Ginny smiles. I have an idea for our next prank. After all, it wouldn't do to let the Carrows think they've cowed us. There was one winner in that scuffle, and it wasn't the Carrows. Underscore 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 underscore. Luna spends 3 days researching the best permanent sticking charm she can find, adding a few flourishes of her own. Ginny is the one to write their message in clear letters below. Not forgotten. Above the words, a giant color photograph of Charity Burbage's face smiles down at students as they pass. Predictably, the Carrows go on a rampage to find who is behind it. But their loss of control only makes the students more curious, people whispering behind their hands. Emboldened, maybe, to let themselves really ask for the first time where people go when they disappear. To consider the possibilities. It's enough. On her way down to the parlor that evening, Ginny notices Nadira sitting by herself. People have taken exception to the way she isolates herself. Thinks she's stuck up. Ginny wonders if maybe she's just lonely. Ginny sits down near her, opening a book on her lap. Hi. Nadira lifts her head. Hi, she repeats back with the barest of civility before going back to her work and ignoring Ginny. Ginny isn't put off by that. She's had much worse from Millicent over the years. You're taking arithmancy. Nadira looks at her. What are you doing? I'm sorry. Ginny asks. Nadira seems to consider her for a long time. Oh, I see, she says, sitting back. You're trying to save me, aren't you? Like one of your little project girls. Ginny feels her cheeks flush, anger rising in her chest at anyone speaking so dismissively of her sisters, of the rare gift being a member of the parlor represents. You don't know what you're talking about. Nadira laughs, a harmless trilling sound belied by the hardness in her eyes. I know what you see when you look at me. You see my headscarf and assume I was forbidden from coming here, like some trapped bird who has finally escaped her cage. Ginny opens her mouth to protest, but she honestly isn't sure what she thought about Nadira and her family, what assumptions she may have made. Because she has watched Nadira all year and seen an outsider. Nadira presses ruthlessly on, voice still quiet and calm and almost conversational as she leans into Ginny. Well, I hate to destroy your fantasies, but I didn't want to come here. Because I have no interest in your version of education. My version. Ginny says, feeling completely flat-footed. Nadira shakes her head. You know the saddest part of all of this? That it's never even occurred to you that it could be your world that is limited, not mine. With that, she stands and leaves, Ginny still sitting with something hot and tight like rage stretching across her skin, the slight itch of what might be shame. It feels like everyone in the room should be staring at her, but the quiet confrontation seems to have unfolded without anyone noticing. After another moment, Ginny pushes to her feet, continuing on her way to the parlor. Only Tilly and Nicola are down there, heads lowered together as they tinker with a project. They give Ginny distracted greetings, and she doesn't bother them. Instead she turns for the library door. It feels a bit like escaping, closing that solid door behind her and slinking into the silence of this space. She leans back against the door, letting her eyes close. What troubles you, mistress? Ginny looks up at Nimue, shaking her head. It's nothing, I just... She glances helplessly around at the stacks and stacks of books. Are there any texts on occlumency in here? No, she says. You won't find any conventional magics in these books. Conventional? Ginny echoes. Wand magic, Nimue clarifies. Ginny frowns. What other kind of magic is there? Nimue gives her a slow smile. My dear, there are limitless other kinds. Ginny's cheeks flush, Nadira's scathing voice echoing in her mind. It's never even occurred to you that it could be your world that is limited, not mine. Nimue flicks a finger and a text slides out of one of the shelves. If you have interest in the keeping of secrets, of mind protections, Perhaps this book could be of use. The book floats over and lands on the pedestal. Ginny crosses over to look down at the rich blood-red leather cover of the text, the title embossed in gold in a language she is unfamiliar with. She reaches for it. Fair warning that the magics contained in these texts have been banned by many of the modern governments. Ginny pulls her hand back. Why? Are they dangerous? Dangerous to whom? Nimue counters with. To the casters. Or to the wand masters. Wand masters, Ginny repeats, brow furrowed. It's a strange phrase. Nimue gives her a smile that is a little hard, a little predatory. Is anything truly without risk? Ginny picks up the book. Underscore 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 underscore. Her detentions with Snape continue 3 nights a week. It's a dangerous game, learning this skill that suddenly seems too important not to have, one she feels like she's been working on since the first day she set foot in this school. But she's also never unaware of just who she is, who Snape is, or the information she has that Tom would only be too pleased to know. Ron's girl. Hermione's parents. The Harry leaning in and kissing her, his fingers sliding down a strand of her hair. What's the best way to hide specific information? Particularly information you are so intent on hiding that it may force itself to the front of your mind. As usual, Snape doesn't jump with an answer, instead waiting calmly for her to work through it. Her first instinct is bury it deep, but she knows how useful it can be to put something else there, something false, but made believable by the protections put in place. The alternative would be to put it on the surface, make it look like a lie, but that seems too dangerous, especially when even the hint of the information would be enough to put people's lives in danger. She tilts her head to the side. What if I keep the memory, don't particularly hide it or make it available, but just change enough small things to render the information useless? Snape nods. Authentic emotion is often enough to sell a thought as truth. If you can tie that emotion and taste of reality and detail to a false thought, it can render the subterfuge invisible. She considers that. Particularly if I make it something embarrassing to me. Or something that seems to highlight a weakness. She's been thinking about the kind of person who would try to use this skill and what they would be after. Information, yes, but also a way to control you. Or if you take truth and make it seem to point to a different conclusion. Let them assume this truth would make you one way, when it really makes you a different way. There's an uncomfortable pause as that statement settles between them. This, she assumes, is what he did to Dumbledore, how he managed that ultimate betrayal. Part of her is enraged, constantly screaming at the back of her mind. The more practical part of her recognizes this as more evidence that she is learning this skill from a master. She feels like that a lot these days, like two people existing inside the same body. She stills as it occurs to her that being two people could be useful. One of her would never think of the dangerous things at all. Snape watches her calmly, as if waiting to see which side will win. But maybe neither side has to win, Ginny thinks. I believe I understand, sir, she says. Underscore 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 underscore. Ginny spends most of the next afternoon trying to find Luna. She eventually finds her in the place she should have been smart enough to check first, the room of requirement. Members of the have started doing this, hanging out during off hours, like it's become more than a just place for defense lessons. Today the room is filled with sunlit couches and tables. Luna is sitting with a clutch of girls, homework and texts spread between them. Ginny sits down with them, setting down her bag but not pulling out her homework. She watches the girls work for a while before turning to Luna. What do you know about wandless magic, she asks. Luna looks up from her parchment. It's quite advanced, she says. Completing spells without a wand. Ginny shakes her head. I don't mean just doing normal spells without wands, but spells that never require a wand at all. That aren't meant to. Oh, Luna says, her head tilting to the side. Do you mean women's magic? Something seems to prickle over Ginny's skin. I'm not sure. Maybe. Well, there were many historical periods where women were not allowed to have wands, Luna explains. Were there? This is not something they ever learned about in history of magic. The other girls have stopped working, clearly interested in this conversation as well. Yes, Luna confirms, looking a bit mystified that they don't seem to know this. Really? Hannah asks. Why? Luna gazes back at her. It was claimed they were too delicate to wield it. Bollocks, Dimazar says. Just wanted to make them easier to control, more likely. Couldn't fight back if they didn't have wands, could they? Luna nods. Some say that women developed their own magics, mostly protective, to compensate for being wandless. Or perhaps the magics were always there. It's hard to say. Ginny can't help but think of being powerless in front of the Death Eaters at the Burrow. Yes, but that sort of magic would be highly illegal, Susan Bones points out. Why? Ginny asks. Susan looks a little taken aback to have to defend the law. Like it just is. Well, she says. It's dangerous, right? I mean, we all did stuff when we were kids before we had wands. But it was sort of raw and uncontrolled, wasn't it? Luna pulls her homework back towards her. Yes, wands have always been about control. From the very beginning. They all give Luna indulgent smiles like she has started talking conspiracy theories again, but Ginny feels something painful lodge in her chest. What do you mean? I think you know. Ginny thinks maybe she does. Hogwarts. Luna nods serenely back at her, but the other girls just look confused. What? Dimazar asks. You build an entire education around the use of wands and then decide who has wands. Adults, not kids. Wizards, not goblins or house elves. Dimazar lifts an eyebrow. Wizards, not witches. Ginny nods. Purebloods, not muggleborns. Hannah looks at her wand. I never really thought about it. And that, Ginny thinks, is probably the point. That evening, she goes down and has a long conversation with Nimue. Underscore 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 underscore. The first week of December, Ginny walks into the dungeon to find Snape sitting at the table, a small book sitting in front of him. You will copy the first chapter of this book, he says. It feels, in many ways, like everything has looped back around to the beginning. Only this time she does not question, just settles into the exercise. She starts writing. Less than 10 minutes in, she is unsurprised to feel the barest ripple of his intrusion into her mind. She lets it slide by without reaction, her quill never pausing in her work. Her surface thoughts are for the words in the book, her boredom with the topic, her annoyance that they are back to writing lines as punishment, thinking about her runes essay she has little hope of finishing on time, wondering if Tobias misses her half as much as she misses him. She lets herself be an open book, or at least one of herselves. The least dangerous but no less authentic one, the Slytherin with muggle-loving parents and ruthlessness in her heart. The one who understands the importance of lowering her head and going along with whatever will keep her life preserved. Who misses Quidditch and hates history of magic and is scared of what happens down in the dungeons. The girl who misses her best friends and is swamped by loneliness sometimes. This Ginny has no doubts except about herself, no reservations about the lies she is being fed, no training in occlumency. She's never kissed Harry or mourned Burbage. There are no edges to be found, no trapdoors or defenses. Just endless depths for him to probe and dig through and feel he knows her, all of her. She is an ocean, fathomless and swelling. She finishes copying the chapter and looks up at Snape. Are we done here, sir? She asks. He looks back at her, his own expression as empty and innocuous as her own. For tonight, Miss Weasley, I believe we are. underscore 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 underscore. Ginny slides the ancient tome back into its place on a shelf. She remains perched on the ladder for a long moment, breathing in the dusty smell of stone and vellum. Mistress Nimue says. Ginny doesn't turn, carefully climbing back down. With her back still to the window, she asks, is it ever possible to put it back together? Perhaps. But never as it was before. So be it. Back in the parlor, only Caroline and Astoria are present. Astoria is practicing her harp, her eyes closed as her body sways and her fingers pluck out a silent song. She is wrapped in an impressive muffling charm, the room completely silent except for the ever-present distant moan of the lake. Caroline sits on the couch, unenthusiastically flipping through a magazine. Hey, Ginny says. Caroline glances up. Her dark blonde hair is pulled back in a slick ponytail, large spiraling curls cascading down her back. Near her temple a stubborn piece of hair has pulled free, and there is a dark smudge near her eye, as if she rubbed impatiently at it, mussing her eyeliner. Skiving off? Ginny asks, sitting down next to her. Caroline shrugs. Like Bins will even notice. Ginny huffs in agreement. She wonders sometimes if they had a history teacher who actually knew what they were doing, then maybe history wouldn't keep repeating itself. There's a stack of magazines on the table. Ginny leans over and picks one up, the glossy front cover showing a scantily clad witch with perfect, pale skin and an almost impossibly small waist. My mother sent them, Caroline says. I'm supposed to pick out new robes. Yeah. Ginny asks, trying to imagine what that would be like, just opening a magazine and picking something out. Caroline sighs. Every holiday she has the Knots and Rosiers and anyone else of consequence she can convince to come over for a dinner party. It's important to be presentable. It sounds a lot like this is something Caroline's mother has told her many, many times. Not for the first time, Ginny wonders where that bright-faced first-year girl with a dangerous glint in her eye disappeared to. Any contenders yet? Ginny asks, flipping open to a page with the corner dog-eared. The robes on the page are in a soft dove grey, an elaborate train trailing behind with what appear to be pearls embroidered around the square neckline. It looks like something Auntie Muriel would wear, not a 16-year-old. You don't have to do this, Caroline says. Ginny looks up at her. Do what? She flips another page. Pretend you're interested. Ginny glances down at the magazine. It's not that I'm not interested, it's that I don't know anything about it. Caroline frowns. There's never really been money for this sort of thing, Ginny explains. Oh, she says as if just remembering that everyone knows the Weasleys are poor. Only instead of looking scornful, she flips through a few more pages, looking thoughtful. That must be nice. This is pretty much the last thing Ginny expects her to say. She wonders what sort of weird fantasy Caroline may be indulging about poverty. Nice. Caroline shrugs. Not having any expectations. You pretty much don't have anywhere to go but up. It's a callous, thoughtless thing to say, but Ginny suspects she doesn't intend it that way. Ginny opens her magazine to a page with a set of ruby red robes, cut dramatically short in the front with a dipping neckline. These, she says, pointing to it. Definitely these. Caroline looks at the page with wide eyes before letting out a startled laugh. Grandmum would have a stroke. At least the party would be interesting. Caroline lets out a distinctly unladylike snort, but Ginny doesn't miss that she folds down the corner on the page all the same. Later that evening, Ginny is the last to go down to her dorm. Bridget and Helena's drapes are already tightly closed. Both of them have been doing a rather nice job of avoiding Ginny, not that they are above whispering nasty things when they are sure she can hear. She knows they are just trying to pick another fight, to find a way to even the playing field again, and she isn't willing to give them that chance. Nadira's drapes are also drawn, but there is a small break in the cloth, light spilling out. Ginny sits on the edge of her bed. Nadira. For a moment, Ginny thinks she will ignore her, pretend to be asleep, but after another long moment her face appears in the break. Yes, she asks, voice frostily polite. Can I talk to you for a minute? Nadira pulls her head back inside with a sigh. Ginny waits for the snap of her curtains and the bark of a spell, but instead Nadira crawls out to sit on the edge of her bed facing Ginny. She's wearing her pajamas, bare feet poking out. But Ginny is more surprised by what she is not wearing, her headscarf. It's startling, seeing the dark, beautiful hair cascading down over her shoulders. Nadira raises an eyebrow. You wanted to say something. Ginny nods. I wanted to apologize. Okay, Nadira says. Now you have. Can I go to sleep? I think you were right, Ginny says, pressing on like she just needs the words to be said, and she wonders if this is just another kind of selfishness. Doing this for herself and not Nadira. I think I was trying to save you. Which is stupid really, because I pretty much believe people can only save themselves. But maybe that's what it was about. Me trying to save myself. Nadira gives her a look like she's just explained the sky is blue. That bed you're sleeping in, that was my best friend's. And I miss her. I miss a lot of people. So maybe I mistook my loneliness for your own. I'm sorry. Her eyes narrow. Just because I took her bed, does not mean I owe you friendship. No, Ginny says. It doesn't. You pretty much don't owe me anything. And all I owed you was an apology for making assumptions about you when I don't know anything about you or your life. Nadira considers her for long moments. Okay. Ginny nods, swinging her feet up on her bed. Good night. She's surprised to hear Nadira say, good night. The next morning they are comfortably back to ignoring each other. Underscore 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 underscore. In Slytherin, no one speaks of revenge. Revenge is hot and quick and reckless. Reciprocity, on the other hand, Ginny has learned all too well, is about control and planning and proportional response. It is quiet and cold and surgical. She wonders if Urquhart never learned that particular lesson. After the disastrous Quidditch match, Urquhart settled into hanging out with Crabbe and Goyle and Tobias and Pansy. Where Urquhart goes, Vasey follows, though Ginny admits that he seems less than comfortable with the association. Still, Urquhart has been strutting around the castle like he's the greatest thing since self-inking quills. Ginny supposes it was only a matter of time until reciprocity caught up with him. Or at least that's the only way she can explain how a venomous tentacular found its way under his bed. Martin is acting out the scene, Dimmers nearly in tears as she howls in mirth next to him. It isn't funny, Hannah says, her face pinched with disapproval. You weren't there, Neville points out. Hannah shakes her head, clearly frustrated. This can't be what the is about. Cruel pranks. Why not? The Carrows don't have qualms about being cruel. You should see what they did to Nigel last week. We have to remember who we are, Hannah insists. We aren't monsters. She turns to Ginny for support. Ginny thinks she's probably the last person to ask about this, but remembers far too well what Hannah's place is in all of this. She's come to rely on Neville, Hannah, and Luna more than she ever thought she could. It's terrifying, having to believe that someone will be there when you need them. Because she's thought about it, played out 1,000 scenarios where this all goes horribly wrong. She can't help it. Okay, Ginny says. We talk to everyone about taking things too far. Right, Neville. Fine, he says. Hannah looks appeased, Ginny and Neville sharing a look over her head. At least, she thinks, after seeing what happened to Urquhart, the other students will think twice about volunteering to be the Carrows' lapdogs. Underscore 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 underscore. When she reports to the dungeons for her next detention, there is a younger student already sitting with Snape. I'm sorry, Ginny says, backpedaling. Miss Weasley, Snape says. Please come in. She glances at the boy, but he doesn't seem to have noticed her entrance. She walks forward until she's standing near the table. Snape remains sitting. Your progress as an Occlumens has exceeded my expectations. You show a rare gift. She knows this is meant to be a compliment, but instead it seems to settle deep in her stomach like a stone. We aren't monsters. Some of that is talent, he says, and some work ethic. But also, I suspect, something more. Her chin lifts. She reminds herself that there is no way for him to know. Perhaps something a bit more unorthodox, he presses, like she might be pushed into bragging. She has learned far too well not to let her surprise show, simply mirroring back his own calm expression. His lips twitch. I could ask you about that, but I realize far too well I am doubtful to get an answer, even if I tried to take it. She wonders if he's beginning to realize he has done his job better than intended. She's let all her other work slide, completes just enough homework not to earn detention. Any WTs and jobs and grades are the farthest from her mind these days. Everything she has gone into the parlor and thither and this, mastering the protection of her secrets. Regardless, Snape continues. I believe it is time to move on. Move on, sir, she asks, wondering if she is relieved by the idea that these detentions are over, or just disappointed. Yes. From the protecting of secrets to the taking of them. Ginny glances at the boy, still sitting silently as if they aren't here, as if they haven't been talking. Only now does she notice the slight sheen to his eyes, as if he is unfocused. Ian, she thinks the boy's name may be a Ravenclaw. And she understands, finally, why he is here. Snape is regarding her with his fathomless eyes and blank expression. He looks haggard, as he always does, cheeks sunken, hair limp around his face. In that moment he doesn't look evil or good or anything in between, but simply cold. Hard. Ruthless. Ginny sucks in a deep breath, because it feels as if the walls are pressing in. Miss Weasley. She has submitted herself to his tutelage, regardless of his murky motivations. She has done without question everything he has asked. But this. She stares at the young boy sitting senseless in his chair, thinks of what she could take from him. What that would mean. For him. For her. What that would mean about her. I won't do it, she says, voice wavering. Snape's eyes narrow. He pushes to his feet, seeming to fill the small space. You will, he insists. Why are you doing this? She wants to ask. What are you trying to turn me into? I won't, she says, taking a step back. Don't make the mistake of thinking you are here by choice, he says, leaning towards her across the table. Shaking her head, she turns and flees the room. Miss Weasley, he calls out after her. She doesn't stop. Underscore 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 underscore. The last 2 weeks of term, Ginny is tense, constantly waiting for a summons that never comes. Snape doesn't seem like the sort of person to make hollow threats. And despite what she may have allowed herself to believe, those were not lessons, but punishments. Still, she doesn't get any threats or dark looks from the Carrows, doesn't get dragged back down to the dungeons. She does her part, completing her homework on time, looking attentive in class, anything not to bring attention to herself. All the while her brain is spinning with the possibilities. Ginny? Neville asks. Ginny pulls herself out of her thoughts, looking up into Neville's concerned face. Yeah. Behind him, someone laughs, a spell apparently having gone awry. This sort of chaos is normal enough in the meetings that Neville doesn't even look back. Everything okay? She nods. Yes. Of course. My mind was just wandering. He gives her a smile that seems only half convinced, and turns back to helping a few first-years Master Expelliarmus. Ginny blows out a breath. Neville's wrong, you know. Ginny turns to look at Luna sitting near her, a letter from her father in her hands. Is he? Fear isn't bad, Luna says. No, this Ginny knows. It can be a very useful tool. But that doesn't mean she isn't constantly struggling not to be overwhelmed by it. Are you afraid? All of the time, she says, like this is an obvious fact and nothing to be ashamed of. It would be a bit foolish not to be. Ginny nods. Glancing up, she sees a first-year Hufflepuff stun Bassenthwaite, his huge frame hitting the mat with a thump. The Hufflepuff looks horrified, but when Neville revives him, Bassenthwaite just pops to his feet with a deep laugh, smacking the young wizard on the back so hard he nearly crumples. "Nice shot," Bassenthwaite says. Luna finishes reading her letter, folding it back in a complicated pattern, tight corners folding in on themselves. "It doesn't mean we stop fighting." "No," Ginny says. "It doesn't." "Come on, you two," Hannah says, coming over to pull them off the couch. "These spells won't master themselves." They let themselves get pulled up into the fray. Underscore 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 underscore. Ginny boards the Hogwarts Express with something like relief. She knows if Snape intended to punish her he would have done it already. But still, it's nice to know she will be out of his reach for a while. Being with her family, she thinks maybe she'll be able to lower her guard for 5 minutes, be in a place she doesn't have to constantly look for trapdoors and tricks. Repercussions. They are only 2 hours out of Hogsmeade when the train comes to a screeching, unscheduled stop. Ginny frowns, and soon enough they hear loud voices down the length of the train. Easing open the compartment door, she glances down the hall. Wizards in dark cloaks and bone-white masks over their faces are pacing up the center aisle. Curious faces pull back into other compartments ashen with fear. Ginny closes the door, sitting back down, her back ramrod straight even as her heart pounds away in her chest. She's aware of Nicola's eyes on her, the way everyone is tense with expectation. The footsteps grow louder as they near, Ginny's hand slipping down into her robes, gripping tight around her wand. The wizards peer into their compartment. "I won't go quietly," Ginny pledges to herself. With barely a glance at them, the Death Eaters move on. Ginny lets out a breath. "Getting a bit full of ourselves, are we?" Millicent says, voice just tiniest bit rickety under her bluster. "Like you're really that interesting." Ginny forces a shaky laugh. "We've got her," someone yells. Ginny pushes to her feet, pressing her face to the window just in time to see Luna dragged off the train by 2 wizards, her hair pale against their robes. Ginny opens her mouth, her fist banging against the glass, but in a flash, all 3 disappear. "Oh, God. Luna." Underscore 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 underscore. Ginny follows Bill into the burrow, setting her bag down. With a competent flick of his wrist, Bill guides her trunk up the stairs to her room. She walks into the kitchen, both of her parents waiting there, faces expectant and wary all at once. She knows she looks exactly like she did when she left. She doesn't have any bruises, no scars. One of the lucky ones. They pull her into warm hugs. "You did it," the hugs seem to say. "You survived." She waits until her father and Bill settle back at the table, Mum bustling around the stove. "They took Luna." "What?" She nods. "A few hours out of Hogwarts." "Death Eaters." Bill and Dad share a look, and they don't look as surprised as they should be. "Why take Luna?" Her voice is calm, even. Not a child demanding answers. Her father considers her for a long moment, something assessing in his gaze. She wonders if he can see that she isn't the same girl who left the summer before. She isn't even the same girl who left Hogsmeade only hours ago. The Quibbler. Ginny nods. She knows better than ever the power of information. Lies. Deceits. The Quibbler is the last free press, the last voice of support for Harry and Muggleborns. They are trying to get him to comply, she says. Yes, Dad says. And he will. He sounds utterly certain. How do you know, she wonders. Because it's what we would do, her mother says, her attention still on the stove, but voice tight. And that's really what this has always been about, hasn't it? Not just compulsory education, a way to indoctrinate them, but also a way to control the adults. She looks at her parents and understands that she is a threat hanging over their heads. You don't want to cooperate. What if it cost you your child's life? Is anything worth your child's life? This is going to start happening more often now, isn't it? Students disappearing without a whisper, for things they themselves haven't done, choices they never got to make. Yes, her father says. I'm afraid it will. Ginny is 16. It means she doesn't have the right to protect herself with her wand. It may even mean she's a child. But being 16 didn't keep Luna from getting taken off that train. And being 16 won't keep Ginny from becoming whatever she has to survive this war. She crosses over and sits at the table. Okay. You'll keep us safe, Ginny. She won't fail again.